Okay guys, so the next assignment that you have to do is stretch your paper. Every project that we do, we're going to work on gessoed paper. As I mentioned in the previous video, you have to gesso the paper, one to make it archival, to make it a surface that's going to accept the paint a little bit better. While you can paint on paper with acrylics and it'll be okay, oils you absolutely cannot paint on raw paper. It will actually eat through the paper itself. And for both of them, it creates a more archival surface because paper can be damaged over time with UV. The other thing that can happen, which is why we're stretching the paper, is that paper, when you get it wet, will expand. It'll cause bubbling and wrinkling in the paper. So when you stretch the paper, it's going to create a nice, smooth, even surface that you can paint on. Okay, so the first thing that we're going to do is get our paper on our board. You can do this flat. I'm just doing it like this so you can sort of see what I'm doing more easily. Actually, I'll put it down towards the middle. So the first thing that we're going to do is actually what's called stretching the paper. It's similar to how we're going to stretch a canvas later on in the semester. But it's sort of preparing the paper for the paint. Now you can use masking tape for this or blue tape. And to be honest, masking tape actually holds a little bit better in this scenario. So what you're going to do is start on one side. It's very important that you're even because you're going to be able to see that paper edge. Try to make a nice even border. Push it down all the way flat. And then I'm going to smooth it out to make sure it's nice and flat. Then I'm going to do the opposite side. Now it's better to do opposite to opposite than come around the corner because I can ensure that it's pulled nice and taut and flat. Sometimes when you do side to side, you can actually get some unevenness and buckling because of how it's pressed down. So I go side to side. It's the same way we're going to actually do it when we're using our canvases. So, which I go, this, say for example I run out of tape, you can always take another little piece of tape, even it out, put it all the way to the edge. So if you make a mistake like that, no big deal. Same thing if I start on my opposite side, if I have a piece of a tape that doesn't go all the way, I can continue it a little bit further. Nice even edge. Do my last edge. So I know this happens a lot when we're in class. Sometimes people want to cut corners and not use as much tape and not tape it all the way down. It's very important that it's completely covered on all four sides. If you leave a corner up, it's more likely to buckle. Alright, so once you have it completely taped down, the next thing that I'm going to do is gesso my canvas. So the thing that I want to do is I'm going to get my gesso out. As I mentioned before, gesso is used to just get my paintbrushes out. Gesso is used as a way to create an archival surface. Traditionally, gesso was made out of ground animal bones. It's originally used during the Renaissance. Animal bones were used because they're very porous. They cause the paint to be able to adhere better to the surface. Now, we're not using the kind that has animal bones anymore. If you look at it at your container of gesso, it says acrylic gesso, so it's made with some synthetic plastic resins. But it still serves the same purpose. If you need to water down the gesso a little bit to make it a little bit easier to paint on, you can add a little bit of water to the gesso. I know if you bought the kit, that gesso in there is actually a really good gesso. It's very thick. You do sometimes have to add a little bit of water to it to just thin it out to have it go on more easily. So now when you paint, we're not going to paint from side to side. It's the same reason what happens when the paper gets wet, it expands. It will actually cause some unevenness to the paper if you go side to side like you were painting a wall. We don't want to do that. The other reason is when I'm painting, you'll be able to see some brush strokes show through, so you'll have like this pattern of just straight vertical lines. You don't want that. We're trying to minimize the brush strokes from the gessoing. And we'll do some different styles of gessoing as the semester goes on. Some that will make the surface very fine and smooth. This one we're just going to kind of do a traditional gesso. So to minimize those brush strokes, we're going to start in the middle and we're going to work our way out. And you want to think uneven brush strokes. So we're going to kind of see how I'm just kind of trying not to keep a regular pattern. I'm going to go every which direction and work my way out to the edge. Notice I've got my 2-inch brush. I'm going to use a bigger brush, not a little tiny brush if you didn't get the kit. You can use just a regular old house painting brush. If I get a hair, which I do right here, I would try to remove it right now during the painting process because it's going to become a little bit of a textural issue later on. If it seals in the paint, it's actually not a big deal, but sometimes you can see the texture of the bristle showing through. So just kind of come back on and repaint it. So like I said, uneven brush strokes. And I'm using one of the school tabletop easels here. Hopefully, like I said, it's best if all of you go and get, if you don't have a board or a tabletop easel. When we start painting, we're using a little bit larger format, so it's actually hard to paint flat, especially with oils, so you're going to want some kind of easel just so you can keep your arms away from it and create a nice even surface. It's done here. Now, this is my first coat. I'm going to do 3 coats on this. The reason for 3 coats, we want to make sure the whole surface is covered. There are no spots that haven't been coated with the gesso. Those of you in oil, this is a common problem. When you start painting, you'll see a weird unevenness to the color when it's drying. That means you actually didn't evenly coat the surface with gesso. So it's very important that you do 3 nice even coats. Completely coat the whole paper with each 3. Once that's done, we'll start in the next project. So for this first paper stretching, go ahead and stretch 2 papers. One we're going to use for our color wheel and intensity chart. The other one you're going to use for your color collage project.